The Wildlife Center is internationally acclaimed teaching and a research hospital for wildlife and conservation medicine. It was founded in 1982. It's a nonprofit, and they have treated more than 90,000 animals, representing 200 species of native birds, mammals, reptiles, and amphibians. The Wildlife Center has also shared the lessons learned from these animals with some 1.5 million school children and adults through Virginia. The environmental education programs, which also Lake Monticello, we are also supporting the National Wildlife Federation with the gardening. This is Gardening for Wildlife. So actually we're trying to, work with this kinds of things so that we can also make our environments around our homes and our little areas, a better and a healthier habitat, not only for the wildlife, but for us. So that's been going well, by the way, but we do have some brochures over here for that. Anyway, Connor grew up in Florida, but we're glad he's now in Virginia. And he lives here at the lake, but he works at the Wildlife Center, as I said. Ever since you were young, right? You were going to parks and, he was always interested in, animals and wildlife. So, when he went to college, he became a zookeeper. And he started teaching people about those animals that he was taking care of, which was really cool. And then after about 5 years, he decided he wanted to have more of a direct role in helping local native wildlife. So he came, I guess it was 2020, September.
Yeah.
And he joined the Wildlife Center. He was at the front desk, so if you called, he would help you with your animal issue. Or he also, helped with the wildlife coordination of, taking in animals and then helping them get released back to the wild. But now he is the center's outreach coordinator. He enjoys working with the center's team of animal ambassadors, which we have ours here today, Marigold. And he's also presenting programs to share their stories, and there's thousands of them that come through, and thousands of animals that come through the center's door. So when Connor's not working though, he's swimming, hiking with his dog, reading, doing all kinds of outdoor things. So we're really happy to have you here, Connor. Thank
Awesome.
you so much.
Well, thank you so much for having me out today. It's a bit of a commute from here to the Wildlife Center, but it is worth it to live in this beautiful community. I really love living here. And thank you for that introduction. That was awesome. My name's Connor. I'm the outreach coordinator at the Wildlife Center of Virginia. And I'm really excited to be able to present a program like this in the neighborhood that I live in. There's so many wild animals right around here in Lake Monticello. So this is such a important program to be able to present and teach people about our wild neighbors. But before I get to the fun part and bring out any of the animals to meet, how many of you have actually heard, just by a show of hands, how many of you have heard of the Wildlife Center of Virginia before? Okay, a good number of you. I kind of anticipated that. So there's some people we already know maybe, and then there's some new friends we can make today, which is really, really awesome. This has been a really exciting year for us at the Wildlife Center because this is actually our 40th year as a wildlife hospital. We were founded back in 1982, and when we were first founded, our president and co-founder, Ed Clark, who still works at the center, he realized that when there was a wild animal that was in trouble, maybe it was hurt, maybe it was sick, or orphaned, or something like that, there was really no place you could bring them to get them help, and he wanted to change that. So he founded what was really one of the first wildlife hospitals in the entire country. And at the time, it was very different than now. He was operating out of a horse barn, essentially, where the patients were kept in stalls. And, a busy year was maybe seeing between 50 and 100 patients. But fast forward, 40 years, and a lot has changed. We went from seeing about 100 patients a year to now seeing almost 4,000 animals every single year. And those are all sorts of animals. We see The smallest animals you can find in Virginia will treat mice and toads and frogs and salamanders, all the way up to the largest animals in Virginia. We take care of woodchucks and beavers and bald eagles and even black bears. And of course, our hospital setting has changed quite a bit as well. We're no longer in a horse barn. We do have a fully state-of-the-art wildlife hospital now where we're able to treat them and get them better and hopefully get them back out in the wild where they belong. And a lot of people are really curious about, how does that work? How do we do that? And it starts with people just like you for two very, very important reasons. And one reason is that while we do have a very, very large staff at our center that can treat these wild animals, we really don't have any staff whose job it is to go out and rescue them. Almost every single animal that comes to our center is brought to us by a member of the public. People that are just going about their day when they happen to find an animal that needs help. They take the time to help it and bring it to our center, which is something we're really, really grateful for. And the other reason it really starts with you is because behind every single animal that receives treatment that goes back out in the wild, there's someone who has donated to make that possible. We're a nonprofit. We don't receive any government funding whatsoever. So we're really, really grateful to the public for all of their support in allowing us to do the work that we do. And while there are now many, many wildlife hospitals around the country, and there's even other large ones here in the state, there are a couple things that make the Wildlife Center of Virginia a little bit different than some of the other wildlife hospitals in our area. One is that we're very, very fortunate to have a large staff. We have, I think, about 25 or 30 full-time staff members now at the hospital. We also have the largest and most well-equipped hospital in the state, which means that we're able to take on the very, very difficult cases, animals that are maybe more injured that other centers wouldn't be capable of treating. And I think something else that really sets the Wildlife Center apart is that we're also a teaching hospital. So our mission is not just to treat these animals, but to figure out why are they coming to our center and how can we teach people about what we're seeing so that we can live better with our wild neighbors. In addition to that, we also are teaching students. We have students from around the state, around the country, and even from around the world that come to our hospital that learn from our veterinarians here so that they can go and continue that type of work at other wildlife centers around the globe. So it's a really, really important job that we're doing. And anytime a wild animal comes to our center, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to bring it back to our veterinary team, and they're going to do a full comprehensive exam. So they're going to, maybe do x-rays, run blood work, look in the patient's eyes and ears. We could do ultrasound if we need to. Whatever test we need to perform to figure out what's going on with that animal. Why is it injured? Why did it come to our center? And what can we do to make it better? And once we figure that out, then we will perform a specific treatment plan. And as you can imagine, that varies quite a bit. If we're treating a broken leg on, say, a toad, it's very different than if we're treating a broken leg on a bear. So there's we'll have to figure out what materials we need to use. Maybe it's medications or bandages or different types of therapies we can offer. And our goal is hopefully to get that animal medically healthy. And a lot of people think that that's where it ends. If we can get an animal medically healthy, they're ready to go back out in the wild. But that is not the case because there's still some other things we need to make sure of. One is a lot of those animals that come to our center that are receiving treatment, they haven't been so active. They're on, maybe crate rest as they're recovering. They haven't been doing all the things they'd be doing out in the wild. So we need to help them rebuild their strength as well. So that's when they move from our veterinary team to our rehab team. And you can think of our rehabbers sort of like physical therapists for wild animals. So it's a hawk that's maybe not so strong. They'll take it to a flight enclosure where they'll exercise it. It'll go flights around the enclosure, build up its strength again. And then the other thing that the rehab team will also help with is to make sure that those animals still know how to survive on their own. Do they know how to capture their own food, evade predators, do all the things that a wild animal needs to do in order to survive out in the wild. And if that's the case, if we can meet all of that criteria, that is the best case scenario, because what we will then do is we'll usually contact the person that rescued that animal, and we'll give them the chance to take it back and release it where they found it, since they took the time to get it help in the first place. And We really wish that that's what could be done with every single animal, but it's not the case. You know, as a wildlife hospital, as one that sees many severe cases, not every animal is able to go back out in the wild. And something that we realized very early on at the center, too, is that almost every single animal that we're seeing at the Wildlife Center is there because of human activity. Almost every single one. It's animals that are being hit by cars, animals that are colliding with windows, animals that are getting caught in landscape netting, or attacked by outdoor cats. One reason or another, maybe directly or indirectly, it's usually human activity that's causing these animals to need help in the first place. So our mission really changed over time from just treating those animals and releasing them to teaching the public. It's become so important to us. Our mission now is literally teaching the world to care about and care for wildlife and the environment. And there's lots of different ways that we're able to do that. But I think that the best way that we're able to teach people about it is with our animal ambassadors, so they can see some of the animals that were formerly patients at the centers that have switched over and are now education animals. So they're no longer receiving treatment, but for one reason or another, they could not go back out in the wild. So they're going to stay at our center as we care for them for the rest of their life. So I'm going to go ahead and bring out our first guest. Oop. And we're going to start things off with a reptile. All right, go ahead and shout it out. I think I heard it over here. What is this? A turtle, you're absolutely right. Do you know what type of turtle this is? A little more challenging. This is a woodland box turtle. It's one of the most common turtles you'll find in Virginia. And this is right about the time you'll find them, and I've seen already a couple around my yard, so you might see them around your yards as well. They're a little bit different than other turtles. Normally when you hear the word turtle, you think of them living in or near the water. But woodland box turtles live their entire lives on land. They are just like tortoises, for example. And it's very, very easy to see how they get the name woodland box turtle. The first part is, well, they're most commonly found in woodland areas. You can find them all throughout the state of Virginia, but very commonly in woodland areas, because if you look at Wilson's shell here, you can see the different patterns and colors. And I'll walk around with him. That is perfect for him to blend in with his with the environment. You can imagine if there's a lot of leaf debris on the forest floor, it's very, very perfect for him to hide under, to blend in, and that helps protect him from predators. But the second part of that name, anyone know how they get the name box turtle? It's because they, unlike other turtles that can kind of just somewhat bring in their legs and head, they are able to completely box up. So I'm going to lift him a little bit, and you can kind of see a little line along the bottom of Wilson's shell there, as Wilson pops his head out. That is a hinge. So if Wilson was spooked, if he's like, oh my gosh, there's a bunch of scary predators in this room, I want to hide, what he would do is he'd pull on his legs, pull on his head, pull on his tail, and he would use that hinge to close that shell so that he was completely boxed up. You would not be able to see any part of his body. And that is, again, an excellent way for him to stay safe and protect himself from predators, because there's a lot of things out in the wild that might want to make a meal out of him. There are foxes, there are raccoons, different animals that he needs to stay safe from. So that's how that's how they get the name woodland box turtle. Wilson here is really, really fun to work with. He's been at the center now for, I think, about 11 or 12 years, a little over 10. And he was actually an animal that was never injured. He didn't come to the center because he had some type of physical injury. Instead, the person that found him noticed that the entire top portion of his shell was painted purple. And we don't know why someone decided it was okay to paint his shell, but we do know that it was really, really bad for him for a lot of reasons. One of those reasons is, well, he would have no way of hiding from those predators. With that brightly painted shell, he was basically holding a flag, letting every single wild animal know exactly where he is. But there are a lot of other harmful things as well. That paint, we don't know if it was a toxic paint. Could have gotten seeped through his skin, get in his eyes, his mouth, his nose. And even if it's not a toxic paint, it can be very, very abrasive, uncomfortable, we're able to easily reach around and get things off of our back, he would have no way of removing that paint. Turtles also have very, very sensitive respiratory systems. So if you've ever smelled paint and maybe got a little bit dizzy because it has a really strong smell, it would be a lot worse for Wilson here. So there was a lot of reasons that was not a good situation for him. But luckily, the person that found him knew that something was wrong. They brought him to our center where over the course of about, I want to say several weeks, we were able to slowly remove that paint. And now he's a perfectly healthy box turtle. He has no health issues, all that paint's off. But he was still not able to go back out in the wild. And the reason for that is we don't know where he came from. Because his shell was painted purple, we don't know if maybe someone kept him as a pet and then released him, if he was taken from one area, painted, and moved to another. But what we do know is that box turtles have incredibly small home ranges. They'll live their entire life in an area that's maybe just a couple square miles. So if you see a box turtle on your property often and you think it's the same one, there's a good chance it actually might be. Because they like to live in small areas, and it sometimes seems weird to us as he's swimming through the air here. It sometimes seems weird to us, but it makes sense for them. They're a small animal. It takes a lot of time and energy for them to move around compared to birds, compared to mammals. So living in a small area that they're very familiar with is beneficial for them. Now, because we don't know where his home is, if we release him, maybe we just took our best guess and we're wrong, what would happen is Wilson would spend his entire life just trying to get back to where he came from. And he would probably not survive that process. So that's why we knew we should not release him out in the wild. But that's okay, because he's doing a great job as an education turtle. As you guys can see, he is not spooked at all around people coming out for programs like this. And it's a great chance to teach people about one of my favorite native reptiles. So one of the things I always love to talk about is their age. So Wilson here, we know he's at least 10 years old, but we don't know exactly how old he is. He came to our center as an adult, and there's really no way for us to tell the age. You hear people say things like, oh, count the rings on the shell. Not quite accurate. So we don't know exactly how old he is, but we do know they can live for a very long time. Does anyone want to guess how long a box turtle can live for? Take a guess. Oh my gosh, that is a perfect guess. Between 60 and 80 years. So you're right in the middle there in the wild.
Good job.
Yeah, great job. And that's under great circumstances. There are, of course, things out in the wild, predators, disease, the struggle to find food. But under the right circumstances, especially at the Wildlife Center where he doesn't have to worry about all that stuff, he'll probably live for a very long time and be there longer than many of the staff members that are currently there. So that's something that's really, really cool about box turtles. I also love to talk about their diet because people sometimes, well, raise your hand if you think they eat grasses or leaves, maybe. What about fruits? What about insects? Insects? What about salamanders? Kind of a weird one, right? The truth is they'll eat all of those things. Normally when people think of turtles, they think of like vegetation that they'll eat. But box turtles are omnivores, and while they do eat grasses and leaves and fruits, they'll eat insects, they'll eat snails, they'll eat slugs, and on the occasion they can catch it, they might even eat a salamander. So they get a varied diet. At the center, what we do is we give it a little turtle tray. We bring him every single day. It's got a little bit of leafy greens. He gets a little bit of fruit, usually a little piece of insect or mouse or fish or something small like that. And then this time of the year, because it's warming up, he gets to take daily trips to his outdoor garden where there's many insects that he can go forage for if he wants more than what we're giving him. So it's a really, really great setup for him. Now this is, like I said, the time of year where you're much more likely to come across an eastern box turtle. During winter, they'll hunker down. It's too cold out for them. They'll go through something called brumation, which is essentially hibernation. But right around May is typically when you start to see them come out. As the temperature warms up, which means you're much more likely to come across them. So how many of you, have you guys seen box turtles around here in the neighborhood maybe? Some of you? Okay. Now how many of you have seen box turtles around roadways? A lot of us, right? It's unfortunate. As they are coming out, oftentimes they have to cross the road to get from one part of their habitat to the other. And, well, let me put Wilson here on the table, and you guys can see what it's like for a box turtle to move around. That right there is about top speed for a box turtle. They don't get much faster than that. And the reason I like to point that out is it takes them a long time often to cross that road. And when a car comes their way, their first instinct is to box up to try to protect themselves. And while that might protect them from our native predators, it can't really protect them from vehicles. So there's some things that we can do to really help these guys out. If you happen to see a box turtle, or any turtle really, on the roadway, the thing that you can do is, if you can safely pull over and it's safe to go out on that road, you can pick it up, just like I'm picking up him right now. I call it kind of the hamburger hold, kind of. And you want to move them in the direction that they're going. You never want to move them back the way they came from, because they're pretty stubborn and they're going to go right back out on that roadway the direction they originally wanted to go. So you always want to help them in the direction that they're going. And if you're helping a turtle across the road, the one thing you just want to make sure is whether it's a snapping turtle, because it's a little trickier to move them than other turtles. But that's one way to really help turtles out. And the other thing that you can remember from Wilson's story is that you never want to relocate wildlife. You know, they have specific home ranges. Most animals that are relocated do not survive, even if they're moved to an area that has all the things that they need. So that's something that we can learn from Wilson's story. But I'm going to go ahead and put Wilson away here. But I will have time for questions at the end. So if anyone has questions about Wilson or box turtles, we'll have some time for that at the end. I think this is the one that most people came here to see or knew was going to make an appearance today. And rather than me carrying this next animal around, she's actually going to pop up right on this table, and she's going to have a nice little meal. So I packed her lunch. And this is Marigold the possum, the one that Lake Monticello is so awesome to sponsor and adopt her and help support her care at the Wildlife Center of Virginia. And she is one of my very favorite animals to work with. And she's somewhat one of our newer ambassadors when I stop to think about it. She actually just came to the center a little over 2 years ago. She was originally a wild possum, but when she was very young, she had probably just left mom, was living on her own for the first time in her life, and she was crossing a roadway when unfortunately she was hit by a car. And when she was brought to the Wildlife Center, she was very, very injured. I happened to be working at the front desk that day, and I admitted her to the center, and I did not think that she was one of those animals that was going to make it. But the vet team worked really, really hard to help her, and they were able to essentially save her life. They were able to repair all of her injuries. But there was unfortunately one thing that they could not fix, and that is that vehicle collision left her permanently blind. So she's not able to see. And unfortunately, we knew right away that meant that she was not going to go back out in the wild, because she would not be able to find her own food, to evade predators, find water, or really even just get around out in the wild. So we knew she couldn't go back out in the wild. But what we also realized as we were caring for her is that she was a little friendlier around people than possums normally are. So we thought, you know what, maybe she would transition well to an education ambassador. And she did a really, really great job. It didn't take her long to kind of become comfortable coming out for programs just like this. And now she comes out all the time to schools, to libraries, to different events where we're able to tell her story. And the truth is, we don't know a lot of details about that vehicle collision. We don't know exactly what caused it, but what we do know is that there's something that often causes possums and many other wild animals to stay out on roadways a lot longer than they should be, and it's something that we're doing. Littering. Anytime we litter, even if it's something like food, something that we don't think is a big deal. A lot of people are eating on the fly. Let's say they're eating an apple, they get to the apple core, they toss it out the window. Hopefully the mic's working a little bit better now. They toss it out the window, they don't think it's a big deal. It's not a plastic, it's not, a chemical, it's biodegradable, and a lot of people are like, hey, maybe I'm even providing a wild animal with a nice snack. But that is exactly the issue. Anytime we litter, especially food like that, we put it on the roadway, something like an opossum or many other wild animals will be attracted to that. So they'll be crossing that road when all of a sudden they're going to freeze and go, oh my gosh, I smell something good. And they're going to spend a lot longer out on the road than they should be, and that puts them at risk of getting hit by a vehicle. Now again, we don't know if that's what caused the vehicle collision, but we do know that that's how it often happens. So something that we can all very easily do, something that we like to say is that no litter is safe litter. If you wait to get where you're going, put your food in either a trash can or recycling bin, or maybe help clean up the roadways or around, that's a really, really great way to help possums out. But we do know that they're also very, very nomadic animals. They typically don't stay in one area for too long, and they're going to be crossing roadways pretty frequently anyways because they're always on the move. So something that you can also do is just be very careful when you're driving, especially around this neighborhood. I know that there are many possums I've seen around here. They are nocturnal animals. They're more active at night. So if you're driving at night, just be prepared to stop for them, especially if you're going around a corner. You never know when they might be shooting across the roadway. Keep an eye out for them. That's a great way to help them out. Now, Marigold here, I love to bring her out for programs because possums, it's really important to have an opossum as part of our programs because really, they're usually our number 1 or our number 2 most admitted animal every single year. Usually we admit close to 400 possums a year. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One reason is that, they're frequently on roadways, kind of like I talked about, but they're very common. They're found all throughout Virginia. So whether you're living out in maybe a rural area or even in an urban area, like a big city, there's usually an opossum around at some point. But the other reason that they're one of the most commonly admitted animals is because they are marsupials. And that makes them a little bit different than some of our other native mammals. Usually our other native mammals will nest in maybe trees or a den on the ground. But for possums, the mom is the nest. They have a pouch on their belly there where they're going to take care of the babies. And a mom can have up to 13 babies at a time. Yeah, so they've got a lot of hard work. So they'll be caring for 13 babies. But if a mom, for example, has 13 babies in her pouch, and she's crossing a road and gets hit, and we admit her to the wildlife center, then it's not just her we're caring for. We have to sometimes care for all of those babies as well. So sometimes one possum admission can quickly turn into up to 14 possums that we admit at a single time. So that's another reason that they're admitted in such high numbers. So I think it's really nice to have them in a program to represent the issues that they, are facing in the wild and the challenges and how we can help them. But going back to the babies, like I said, they can have 13 babies at a time in their pouch. And I want you all to look at your hand and then look at your fingernail. And a baby possum, when it's first born, is about the size of your fingernail. They just look like little pink jelly beans, and they stay in the pouch where they're going to basically nurse for mom until they're a little bit bigger, a little bit older. Then they're ready to leave that pouch, and they kind of will rock climb up mom's back. And then those babies will kind of ride around on mom's back until they're ready to go off on their own. So a very, very interesting and unique lifestyle for possums as they grow and develop. Now, Marigold here she was admitted in 2020, the fall of 2020, I believe. So she's actually, we don't know her exact age, but we have a pretty good guess that she is just about 3 years old, which sounds pretty young, but for possums, that's actually really old. Even in captivity, when they don't have to worry about predators or finding food or anything like that, their lifespan is just about 3 to 4 years. So Marigold here is definitely an elderly possum. She's getting up there. But she's still doing a really, really great job as an ambassador. We're often checking up on her. She gets an annual exam with our veterinary team to make sure she's still healthy. So she's still doing a really, really great job. And as you can see, she still really enjoys coming out for programs and the food that comes along with it. So something I'm going to try to do, this doesn't always work, but I love to put the microphone up to Marigold. to capture that sound. Now, if a person makes that sound, it would drive me crazy, but when possums do it, it's the cutest thing in the world to me. And what she's getting right now is she's got a mixture of fruits and veggies. She's got a little bit of egg, a little bit of kind of like this dog and cat food mixture, and her absolute favorite food is mice. She's got little pieces of mice in there. She usually has a very, very specific order she eats the food in. She starts with the mice usually, then she'll kind of eat the egg, then the fruit, and she's kind of like me. She saves the veggies for last, but she'll eventually get to it, and she'll eat it all. And while I have her out, I also want to talk about some of the misinformation out there about possums, because there is a lot of misinformation out there. One thing that, or myths, one thing that a lot of people have probably heard, or maybe seen on TV or in books or something like that, is that possums can hang by their tail. And that's not quite accurate. Marigold here is about 8 pounds. She's a little too heavy to hang by her tail. But the tail is very, very important for possums because they do use that to grab things just like we do with our hands. Their tails are what's called prehensile, which means they can use it to wrap around and grab things. So as I lift her tail, you can kind of see it starting to wrap around already, just a little bit and loosely. But if she wanted to, she could wrap it around more. And it's an excellent way for her to maintain her balance. You know, if she's up in the tree, she can use it to wrap around branches, maintain her balance so that she doesn't fall. Something else, have you guys heard that possums can't get rabies? Has anyone ever heard that? Some people have. There's sort of this myth out there that they can't get rabies. They can. Any mammal can get rabies, but they are very, very unlikely to get rabies, and it's thought that it's because they have a lower body temperature than our other native mammals that makes them kind of like not a great harbor for that virus. And the most common one that I like to bring up is possums playing dead, because I know that everybody has heard the term possums playing dead before. And that one is sort of half true. It's not something that they do on purpose. So when a possum becomes really stressed out, like maybe they're being attacked by a predator, for example, they can become so stressed out that they just pass out. It's a chemical reaction. It's not something that they are purposely doing or that they can control. So are they playing dead? Not exactly, but it can sometimes work in their favor, because when that happens, sometimes the predator that's chasing them goes, you know what, I don't know why that possum just died, but maybe I shouldn't eat it. And then they'll go the other way. So it can sometimes work in their favor. Oh my gosh, you're just about finished there, Marigold. Well, I'm going to go ahead and grab her crate real quick. I'm going to turn you around. Or we'll go this way. There we go. And here's her little crate, so she's got her nice blanket set up there. So what I would normally do, what I used to do, I should say, is we have trained her to go towards where we snap. Because she is blind, to help her figure out where the crate is, where we're putting the food, we trained her to go towards the snap. But in her old age, I think she's starting to lose her hearing a little bit. So it's easier for me to kind of use the food as a guide. Either she's losing her hearing, or maybe she's just deciding not, I don't want to go back in the crate yet, or who knows. But using the food like that as a guide is really helpful. And something I like to mention too as I have her out is that all the animals coming out for programs like this, we never force an ambassador to come out for a program. They all have the option to come out. So for Marigold, for example, before I headed this way, I went into her enclosure. I brought the crate in, I opened it up, and I asked her to go in the crate, and she has the option to do that or not. And usually she hops right on in because she knows that, oh my gosh, this means we're going on a fun trip. I'm going to get a lot of food, and she likes to go. But there are times when she doesn't want to go, and I don't know why. Maybe it's cold out, maybe she's tired, maybe she's not feeling well, whatever. and she'll decide not to go in the crate, and that is completely fine too. Rather than forcing her to come out for a program, we would just ask one of our other ambassadors instead. So everything is up to them. They're never forced. I love that reaction. I love that reaction. So this is Clifford, and Clifford is a corn snake. And one of the reasons that I love to bring snakes out for programs is because I know while there's a lot of us that really like snakes, there's also a lot of people that are a little bit nervous around snakes. And that's okay. Raise your hands if you are a little bit nervous around snakes. See, you're not alone. You can look around and see you're not all alone. It's really easy to see how people become afraid of snakes. When you look at how snakes are portrayed in movies and TV shows and books when we're kids, they're always the villains. They're the bad guys. They're portrayed in a bad way. They're meant to be sort of scary, to stay away from them. So from an early age, we're kind of taught not to like snakes. And then even as you get older, when you see snakes in, news articles in the media, you're going to see things that say, danger, be on the lookout for snakes or more venomous snakes than ever. And it really has like a bad connotation to it. Like they're not something you want to have around, which is far from the truth. Snakes are very, very gentle and harmless creatures, and they make really great neighbors because if they're around your property, if they're around your home, they're going to keep things away that you really don't want there, like mice or rats, which is much, much more harmful for people than snakes are. So Clifford's story is a little bit sad. Clifford was his true backstory is a bit of a mystery to us. He was kept as a pet. Whether or not he was purchased at a pet store or taken from the wild, we don't know. But what happened was his owner passed away, but nobody knew that the owner had this snake. And he was kind of kept in an area of the home where no one was looking, and so he went for a very long time without proper nutrition, proper water, and all that stuff. So he was in pretty rough shape when he was first found, but he was brought to our center where we were able to give him the right nutrition, all the environmental things that he needed, and slowly but surely he got healthier, and now he's the beautiful snake that we have here today. So we don't really know what his backstory is, but what we do know is that, because he was kept as a pet for some period of time, that there's really, even if he was originally from the wild, there was no way to release him because he might have become dependent on people for care. He might not have ever had to do the things that a wild snake needs to do, whether it's finding food, hunkering down for winter, evading predators. So we knew that he couldn't go back out in the wild for a lot of reasons. That's just one of them. But he's made a great ambassador where people can meet him, and it often helps people get over their fear of snakes when they see him, just because of how gentle he is. Now, of course, if this was a wild snake that I picked up, it would not be this gentle. He is very, very comfortable being handled by people because he's been in human care for so long. But I love to bring him out and teach people about snakes. And do you guys see what he's doing right now with that tongue? Smelling, absolutely right. When they flick that tongue out, what they're doing is smelling. So as they flick their tongue, they're actually capturing scent particles right from the air, pulling it to the back of their mouth where they have a specialized organ, and that will help them figure out where that smell is coming from. And the reason that their tongue is forked is because that can help them determine what direction that smell is coming from. So if they shoot out their tongue, they have that forked tongue, and they're going, I'm capturing more of the mouse scent particles on the right side of my tongue here, they know that that's the direction they need to go to help locate their food. So it's a really, really great adaptation for them. Now, usually when I talk about snakes, when people are nervous around snakes, it's usually the venomous ones that people are concerned about. Here in Virginia, we do have only 3 venomous snakes. We have the timber rattlesnake, the copperhead, and the cottonmouth. And the copperhead is the only one that's truly found almost all over the state. The other 2 are sort of regional. I would say, in my experience at the Wildlife Center, 95% of the time that people reached out and said, I have a venomous snake in my home, can you help? And they sent pictures, It was not a venomous snake. It was one of the other species. It can be very, very difficult to identify snakes. They can look very, very different when they're young versus when they're mature. They can look very similar to other species. And there's a lot of information you'll hear out there, like, oh, well, look at the pupil shape, or look at the shape of the head. And it's like, if you don't know whether it's a venomous snake, you probably should not be getting that close to look at those features. But it's very, very easy to stay safe around snakes. If you find a snake and you don't try to approach it, you don't try to pick it up, you don't try to hurt it, you don't try to do anything with it, if you leave it alone and just stay your distance, then you're safe. They are not aggressive. They don't try to go after you. Most of the time when people are bit by snakes, it's because they're trying to do something they shouldn't, like they're trying to hurt it or they're trying to move it. If you leave them alone, they will leave you alone, regardless of whether it's a non-venomous or venomous species. The only other circumstance that in which people will sometimes get bit by snakes is hiking. If you are hiking, you do want to be careful about where you're stepping. Snakes like to blend in. They like to hunker down often under leaf piles or under logs. So make sure you're keeping to the path, not stepping on those things, because a snake, if it's about to be stepped on, it will try to bite you to defend itself, but not in an aggressive way at all, just to protect itself. So that's some very, very easy things that you can do to live safely around snakes. And like I said, if you see a snake around your garden, if you see a snake around your home, thank them, because they are there to really help you out, free pest control, and they're going to keep away the things that you don't want there. And it could be like a little indicator to you too. If you see a snake around your home, it's usually because there's some mice or rats around your home as well. So you might want to make sure that your house is, there's no holes or anything like that the mice can get into your home. So it's a good indicator there. But I love to have him out. He's been at the center now for, I think, 7 or 8 years now. We don't know how old he is, but he's doing very, very well. At the center, we feed him once every 2 weeks. That's all he needs to stay healthy. Unlike us, we eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and if you're like me, a lot of meals in between. But he, just one meal every 2 weeks is enough for him to maintain his body condition, stay very healthy. And he gets mice. It's not live mice. We get it just like, we get our food at the grocery store. We'll thaw it out for him and put it in his enclosure. And he's not a picky eater. He usually goes for it. So he's doing a really great job.
Can that kind of a snake dislocate his jaw?
Yeah, pretty much all snakes can do that thing where they can kind of like essentially dislocate their jaw to eat things that are bigger than their head, which is kind of crazy to think about. It's actually similar to if you as a person could eat a watermelon whole. That's what it's similar to. So it's kind of crazy to think about that they're able to do that. Out in the wild, these snakes will mainly eat small mammals, mice or rats, maybe chipmunks. They might take advantage of some other things as well if they came across maybe an egg or whatnot, but small mammals make up the bulk of their diet, and they're found oftentimes sort of in fields around Virginia is where you'll encounter a snake like this, but they're very, very cool, and a species that I really, really like. They're really pretty. If you look at, they kind of have like that reddish pattern to them, and you can also see the pattern beneath as well, sort of checkered a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yes.
If there was like a stray dog, would you treat that too? Or?
So we would not treat a dog. At our hospital, we're only able to treat native wildlife. So we don't work with domestic animals like dogs or cats. That would be more of like the animal shelter. And we also don't work with exotic animals. So if like you found like a tiger in your yard, we wouldn't be able to help you with that. You probably have a lot of other concerns anyways. But but pretty much any animal that's native to Virginia, any wild animal that's native to the state is an animal that we can treat. And you never know what animal it is that we're going to get. There's certain animals that are very, very common to our center. We usually get lots of squirrels, lots of cottontails, lots of possums, lots of robins, some of those more common wildlife species. But we also get some of the occasionally, less common animals. We sometimes get golden eagles. Occasionally we'll get beavers. We'll get certain bats. We've had endangered species of bats come to our center, so you never know what you're going to get. I have to say, just from working at the front desk, one of the interesting phone calls I had one time was someone called me and they said, there's an emu in my yard. And I was like, there's not an emu in your yard. And they're like, no, there is. And I was like, okay, send me a photo. And they sent it to me. And I was like, well, darn, there's an emu in your yard. That's, again, not a native animal, so nothing that we could help with. But I gave them the number for the State Wildlife Agency and Animal Control. So hopefully someone was able to help them with that. But yeah, again, if it's a native species, then it's usually something that we can take in and treat. Now I'm going to go ahead and get him back into his little carrier here. And I definitely wanted to, we covered some wildlife issues, but since I happen to, live in this neighborhood, I just want to talk a little bit as well about the specific wildlife issues that I've noticed just from living here and some things that we can do to help keep our wild animals safe. We're very fortunate to live in an area that does have a lot of native animals around here. Just this morning before coming to work, I saw a juvenile fox, which was really, really cool to see. And I also saw a little white-tailed deer fawn, which is an exciting time to see those little babies out there. But there's a lot of challenges that they're facing as well because we live side by side with them. One of them that we covered in pretty good detail was the vehicle collisions. It's very common as you're driving down these roadways to see squirrel is the most common I'll see, or sometimes other animals that are hit by cars. And sometimes those are unavoidable, but we can do our best by keeping to that speed limit, going slower around corners, just being prepared to stop for them is something that's really helpful. If you happen to see a wild animal on the side of the road and you're going down the road, don't assume that it's not going to pop out on the roadway as soon as you get there. They oftentimes, as you get closer, they'll kind of panic and they make sometimes bad decisions and they run right out on the roadway. So that's something to be mindful of. I think one of the biggest issues I've seen actually in this neighborhood though is outdoor cats. I've seen a lot of outdoor cats in Lake Monticello, and I can't say for the neighborhood as a whole, but around my little cul-de-sac where I live, there's 3 or 4, and I know a lot of people. I love cats. I've got 2 cats, but outdoor cats have a devastating impact on native wildlife. They're the #1 cause for admission at the Wildlife Center. I would estimate that on any given year, probably between 800 or 1,000 animals come to our center because of cats. And if you have an outdoor cat, there's really no way to mitigate the damage that they can cause to wildlife. People will try to feed outdoor cats, and even a well-fed outdoor cat will hunt just because that's what they do. They're hunters by nature. And even if the wound that they inflict is minor, they have such dangerous bacteria in their teeth and their claws that almost always, even if it's just the tiniest puncture wound, the animal's going to have severe infection. So even when they get to our center, if the wound is minor and we start antibiotics right away, they usually still don't make it. So outdoor cats is one of the biggest causes of damage to native wildlife. Vehicle collisions was the other one. I think those are probably the 2 big ones I've seen around the lake. I'd say the one other thing, looking on the positive side of things rather than the negative things that can happen that we can do to help out animals, is plant native plants out in the yard. There are people that love having the wildlife around, which is great, and they'll put food out for wildlife, but that's not a good idea. Rather than putting food out for wildlife, plant native things. Plant all the native species that these animals use, whether it's pollinators or whatnot. And that's a great way to provide habitat and food for these wild animals, a great chance for you to see them, and also make sure that they're not becoming dependent upon people for food as they come into your yard. So those are the three things I wanted to mention that, just having lived in this neighborhood, I think are things that we can do to really keep the wildlife safe. And with that, I'm going to wrap up this program. I'm really really glad you guys came out for this today. I'm glad you got to meet Marigold, and thank you guys so much for sponsoring her and all that. And I'm going to stick around a little bit, so if you have any questions, feel free to come up. The one other thing I want to mention is if you ever find a wild animal that's in trouble, whether it's sick or hurt or orphaned, or there's just a wildlife situation you need help with, there's a snake in your home, you don't know what to do, or you have some type of issue, give our center a call. We are open 7 days a week, every single day of the year. If you find an injured animal in the middle of the night, we even have an after-hours emergency line you can contact, and we will help you figure out what to do, how to help that animal, whether it needs to come to our center or somewhere else. So feel free to call us at any time. And with that, I'll wrap it up. If you have any questions, feel free to come on up to the front and ask me. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.